This conference will now be recorded.
Are they gonna follow this? Well, they were like right with her, and they were like, the kid comes
Greg,
up.
I will forget. Greg, you're gonna have to say John. You're gonna have to say John camera. John, hit camera 2. You know, you're gonna have to be. You're gonna have to be my Freddie DeCordova. Yeah.
We just need Joseph to have a hot button on the things right here.
No, I just. That's right.
Good call, Brett.
That way you can put
Oh,
it.
God.
Yep, and I'll give you one for the.
You hand me my tool, sir. Big one.
That's the gavel.
Mine. Not that little committee one. This is a city council meeting. Okay. We will open up this October 19th regular session of the Common Council of the City of Port Orford at 5:33. I gotta get a new prescription. All righty, so we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. We just did roll call. Councilor Tidy
Here.
Councilor Burns,
here.
Councilor Rask,
Here.
Councilor Velisis,
Here.
Councilor Webb,
Webb present.
and Councilor Pogwitz.
Tim here.
All right, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no presentations, correct?
Correct. I tried to line up Superintendent Brown. He gave a nice presentation at the Rotary about what they're doing in the schools, but he wasn't available.
Maybe next month?
I'm gonna try.
Okay. Well, we got time. It's gonna get dark soon. Okay, consent calendar. We got the minutes on there for 9/21/23.
I make a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that? Which is basically just the minutes right now?
I just have to say there's 2 spelling errors, which is Mr. Huddle and Shayla Kudlak. And so it's just such a minor thing, but we should fix that.
And I think you can do minor changes without rescind. Yeah, it's
There's
just.
2 others. That's
you know,
what the ones I
spell
saw.
check.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion on that?
Hello. Yeah, so in the minutes, sorry. There is one place that didn't make sense to me. Under 8C, it says Garrison Lake water permits, Pogwiz motions to let the permits. On the page.
Gotcha.
Let the permits what?
Go, I am assuming.
Well, that's what we did.
Yeah.
I hope.
Expired. Or, well, they were already
There's a term
expired.
for it.
Lapse.
Expire.
So we should probably.
Like,
We
Tim
didn't-
says expire.
We didn't
Yeah.
pursue.
Thank
They
you,
already
Tim.
expired, didn't they?
Tim was
Yeah,
there.
lapse, I think, is the
He's talking to Greg Waters.
lapse is right.
Joseph, did you get that? Joseph, did you get the correction to the minutes?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Can I get that
It's under 8C, Garrison Lake water permits. Says Pogwiz motions to let the permits, it needs to say lapse.
No, he said expire.
He said expire.
Well,
Expired.
hold on though. Is that accurate? Because
Tim
Yeah.
just said he
They
said
did, they
expire.
already
they had
expired.
expired,
Yeah.
and the question was, is do we
Let him expire.
appeal?
Yeah. His
So
motion.
Okay, sorry, I don't want to complicate things, but that's what was said.
No, I know, but it was like he had the whole motion except for the very last word.
Okay,
of the
very good.
sentence. That was the spell check
Very good.
or grammatical error. Any other discussion? All right. Brett, I think the motion and the second was on the table when you were out of the room, but it was just for the minutes of 9/21. And I'll call for the vote. Tim,
Tim, yes.
Perry,
Harry, yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and Brett. Webb, no. Okay, do we have any additions to the agenda?
I have one correction. In these minutes, we voted to move end to liaison reports, and it's under consideration.
Okay, well, we can do both. So we'll add your report under, what are we up to, 10 now? Looks like. Wow, that's a lot. No wonder they take a while. Okay, so that'll be end-to-end, and then we can hit it up again at considerations for the, after we learn all the good stuff from your report. All right, so no additions to the agenda. Oh, one thing I did want to clarify. We did have one executive session tonight, right?
Yes, we have one executive session that I asked for of 1926602D to conduct deliberation with persons designated for labor
Right.
negotiations.
The other one was a snap, is not.
From what I understand, 13A, Joseph heard you to say that, so he put it on there. And if you didn't
No,
say
that's,
that,
strike that. No, I did say that, but it just was like not, yeah, no. I gotta be careful what I say. around
so
people.
that's something to take off the agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I do that during
Yeah.
additions?
Is there consensus? All right.
Okay, so we will move into citizen concerns. Please speak on agenda items. Do we have a list?
I don't have a list.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience or online? Oh.
It's your exercise for the day.
Is there anyone online with public comment? In the audience? Terry? Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes,
All right.
which is actually a pretty long time.
I am Terry Grimes. I am the manager of Ray's here in town. And this has to do with the camp that is next to my store. I have not had a chance to talk to the city council before. I have talked to many, some members, some not, about the issues that have, happened. And I thought tonight was a good time to present it officially. So the camp next to Ray's, it's been the official spot since July 1st of this year, 2023. I have been very vocal about the issues and concerns that I've had in my store with the city council members and members of N2N. I am not sure all the city council members have heard the true issues and concerns, and here are some. Ray's customer count has went way down since the camp has been next to the store. Our older customers shop during daylight hours. They do not feel safe otherwise. Some don't come unless they have someone with them. Others have chose to shop more out of town because they don't feel safe and don't want to be harassed by the camp members. All summer long, our tourists have commented that the camp is a bad look for our beautiful coast town. All of us businesses rely on tourist traffic. That helps keep us going throughout the rest of the year. Our Ray's bathroom is getting trashed daily, more than ever before. Just yesterday, someone in the morning broke the toilet paper dispenser. The toilets are clogged daily, teepees on the ground, other issues on the floor. The bottle area is a struggle to keep clean from all the garbage, from all the extra garbage that's put in the trash cans and all over the ground. The trash has easily doubled since the camp has been next door. My employees don't feel safe at night or early morning walking to their cars from or to the parking lot. I have told the employees to have others with them if that'll make them feel safe. I have trespassed most of the camping members even before they became part of the camp. I have trespassed new camping members since, just one yesterday. Theft of health and beauty aids, camping items, pallets, milk crates has drastically increased. The camp members that were trespassed before are now living at the camp, do come in the store when I am not there. I have caught 3 of them myself when they didn't think I was there. Their comments were, I thought I could be at the can machine. I thought I could use the bathroom. You have to let me. I thought I could still come in. The camp members that are trespassed walk through the parking lot daily to go to the library, which is raised property. I should call the police, but the police have a lot more to do than to come to my store constantly. Panhandling right out front of my store has drastically increased. When I let the panhandlers know they cannot be there for my store or on the property, I always get cussed out. Just yesterday, I wasted 5 hours of my time dealing with issues with the camp. My crew and I waste hours a day dealing with issues with the camp in one way or another. This wasted time has made it very difficult to keep the store stocked and clean. Our store is trying to help and serve our whole community, and all this takes time from that. Again, the city council is under the impression that things are going just fine at the camp and that myself and my crew are fine with the camp. That is not the case. I am sorry if you've been misled, and thank you for your time. The picture on the back, I asked Trade Transfer to bring me new lids. These were just brought today. This lasted 2 hours for someone trumped them down. So that's some of the issues that we are having.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right. Then we are going to move on to departmental reports. And I hate to do it, but I have to cut out, well, for probably at least an hour. So Council President Belisis is going to take over. I'll be pretty close if there's an emergency. Sorry to do this at the last minute. Oh, I don't have to bang the gavel for a switcheroo. I don't think. Close the meeting. It'll be good. 1 hour. I'll be back when you guys do a vote for the 2 hour mark in case I need to do the
Well,
timer.
I'm going to try to get the meeting done by then.
Yeah. That's our mark. I'm gonna get dinner.
Okay, well, this is my first time doing this, so hopefully I will have learned from Pat and others before me. And no interruptions.
He's giving me camera direction,
Okay, excellent.
switching from camera 1 to camera 2.
Okay, so the next item is administrative reports. So John, can I turn it over to you?
Thank you. In your packets, I had 2 items on the administrative report. One was SOD, which is Southern Oak Death. And as you see from the report, the state has found some Southern Oak Death in some trees, and then the Southern Oak Death they found extended onto our property. And so I gave him permission to go onto our property and abate the Southern Oak Death. So I just want to let you know that. And then the communication with the state was that if it gets more extensive, we would come up with a plan, but just for a few trees, seemed like go ahead and do it. And then on the second item, the safety committee had recommended a safety policy for the city. And I just want to present it to council to see if you approve it. And then I'll go ahead and sign it. It's got a signature spot. That being said, I have more items on the, Greg has a question.
Real quick on the sod.
Yes.
What property was that?
I think it might've been.
There's a map in there. It's the one that's actually the wetland at the back end of the nature trail, kind of right up against where the houses are on Hamlet.
Good.
That's kind of in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Yep. And then I do have, since the agenda was published, I have some items for the city council to report on. So if you've got a minute, I'll go through these real quick.
Well, John, did you want to get our take on the emergency thing first?
Oh, the
Or do you
safety
want
committee.
the
Thank
safety
you. It's
committee
not the
thing?
emergency. thing.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Sure. You guys, have you had a chance to look at that safety committee policy? And if you just give consensus, I'll go ahead and adopt that.
I thought it looked good. Anybody have any concerns?
Very good.
Nope, looks like
All
we
right.
do.
So then, and I should have done the presumed, unless there's any objections, I'll go ahead and do that then. But anyhow, so I'll just go ahead and push on with some items that came up. So if you saw yesterday's paper, the back of the paper was the press release on our short-term rental ordinance. So it's part of our public education campaign before we start issuing the licenses and doing the inspection. So we're slowly but surely rolling it out. I also, and I can't remember if I reported this to you last time, but I had a meeting with the city of Bandon, and they actually have a computer program they use on their short-term rental ordinance. Their short-term rental ordinance, I think, is in the planning department, but other than that, they have two good functions that I thought would be good. One of their functions scours the internet for vacation rentals in their jurisdiction, and they've said that that's found a number of vacation rentals that they weren't aware of. And then the second function, they have a function that helps. You gonna grab your nameplate too? Okay. Anyway, they also have a function that helps regulate the complaints. So that was going to be, and then the other thing I did is I've been in touch with a person who does home inspections for real estate lending. It's slightly different than a building inspector or a plumbing inspector, code inspector, but that person might be available to do some of the inspection work on our program, and that would be helpful. What I would think we would do is we would start the program first, get some application fees and whatnot, and then look at spending money on the program and the inspector. So that's on the short-term rental ordinance. The next thing is I did get word this week, and John, I looked for it in your Public Works Department report, but I didn't see it. But the dredging permit, so we've got notice that our dredging permit was received by the Corps, and also the Corps has, Greg?
No.
Okay, so then the Corps has also put out a notice of public comment period that expires on November 17th. So if I'm reading it right, and I think it anticipates we could be dredging as soon as in water work period for next year in 2024.
It's like a world record.
Well, here's what I would like to say. Initially, we heard it would take years to obtain this permit.
It can take years to obtain.
Well, here's what I will say. I haven't been able to track it down, but it's possible that outreach to United States Congresswoman Val Hoyle and her field representative, Zach Ochin, had something to do with the accelerated timelines. They came.
That's their job.
I know. Well,
They're our representatives.
like
That's
I
why we
said,
call them. Yep.
they came down and they've toured the site with us, and I
Connected the dots.
yeah, and I'm allowing a permissible inference there, but it's entirely possible. But that was good news. A little bad news. If you remember, we applied for a grant to fix the potholes on 18th Street for the Small Cities Grant. We did not make the list. They had a list of other deserving cities, but we automatically go in the hopper for the next round of grants there.
John, is
And I
that
just-
up on the top around the corner there? Is that
It's that thing, you go up and it's right. Anyway, John, it's the potholes on 18th.
Yeah,
might be-
from,
before it turns into?
from the county line down to the top of the hill, the last house.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys very
Yep.
much. We heard you. Thank you.
And we
Really
also had,
appreciate you coming. Thank you.
in that grant, we also had a section of Hensley Hill that's fallen off the road. So unfortunately, we didn't get it. Maybe next year.
And then since the last meeting, on a lighter note, part of my job is to deal with community groups. And in that respect, I helped the Rotary as we flipped hamburgers at that cross-country meet
Cinnamon roll run.
that happened in Buffington Park and the nature trail. And of course, that was a good success. We basically volunteer and sell the burgers, and the proceeds go to the team. Another thing on a lighter note, Monday and Tuesday this week, I was at Pacific High School. I participated. They have a mock interview class. So I participated, and I acted like I was a hiring person looking for public works entry-level position. Other employers who were there were Road Credit Union, Coast Community Health, and then a local realtor and a local shop owner. So what that was is they had a variety of, if the students picked a direction they wanted to go in, it was really positive experience. And Perry, I've tried to include you in some of the activities with the school that I'm getting as our school. Okay, good. Just want to let you know. And then at your places, I've been working on, I should have given you all a org chart. You should see an org chart there. It's Ann's got it there. If you look, it looks like that. We got 13 and a half, 14 people, so it's not super sophisticated. I ran it by Public Works and Police, and so that's something you guys were looking at. We're trying to go over things, and in that respect, the personnel manual is a priority for the city, and I've got a meeting with CIS tomorrow to go over the personnel manual with them. Job descriptions per the mayor's direction. I sent job descriptions out to everyone. A couple of job descriptions were not included in that because they didn't exist. And so I've created one. I think it's a planner recorder hybrid job description. And it was so funny. I'm on this listserv for the Oregon Municipal Recorders Association, and somebody on the listserv signed their name planner recorder for city of so-and-so and said, oh, this is great. Can you please send me your job description? And this person emailed me back and said, unfortunately, our job descriptions are way behind and all this stuff. So I just went ahead and found a recorder job description and a planner job description. I found a recorder job description in our archives, but I couldn't find a planner job description. So I just kind of put them together, and I've run them by the union guy. And so then then that one, and then I also combined the city administrator finance director. My thinking is, because David's here part-time, and my thinking is once we get up to maintenance level, one person could do both functions in the time allotted. And then also, by the way, you're paying me full-time and you're paying him part-time. We are kind of under priced or we're not really competitive in the salary range on a job like that. But if we had the money that we've got for David and we combine that with mine, we might be able to attract a good candidate. So that's the work on that stuff. The playground at Buffington Park, I've been working on an invitation to bid. I've been working with the person who submits the playground stuff, the playground makers. What I'm trying to do is get a procurement procedure that would allow us to piggyback on another public entity's contract with Playcraft already.
Oh, because the city of Brookings just installed a brand new playground and opened today. So maybe if you can reach out to them and see what they used. Maybe.
Good.
They literally just installed a brand new playground that got opened.
So Margaret there gave me a list of the customers they have so that I can go ask them. The idea is what we need to do when we do this, we need to say, so you guys are kind of familiar with public contracts. You have to do competitive bid, competitive procurement. That's where you notice and you advertise and you get the bids. This piggybacking is called cooperative procurement. And it says that if another jurisdiction has done all that competitive stuff and allows you to piggyback on theirs, you can just enter a contract with the same term. It's kind of like a joint powers agreement or a mutual aid agreement or an intergovernmental agreement where you're agreeing with that other city that they'll do the advertising and you can just procure the product. So I'm looking at that. That would really streamline that because that's just been proceeding at a glacial pace. The next one is the watershed property purchase agreement. I was going to try to put this on for today, but it just didn't work out numbers wise. And what I'm talking about there is we have some requirements that we have to have this ordinance available publicly for a week before we adopt it. And what happened was, if you may or may not recall this detail, but we had the loan agreement with the DEQ for the money and then the forgiveness of the loan part in those terms, but it had a pledge on our sewer revenues. The problem is that means DEQ got first dibs at our sewer revenues in that agreement. And the problem is we have already an agreement with the USDA where they have first dibs on our sewer stuff. And so it took until now to come up with new language. So we finally got that new language, and then I had to send it off to what we call lending counsel or bond counsel. And they said to do this, and it's now the language is a full faith and credit of the city. And so to do a full faith and credit loan, we have to do another ordinance with a 30-day waiting period after it becomes effective and all this stuff. So that is the hiccup on that. But so we're just another 30 days away, but I'm optimistic. Everybody's motivated to make this happen. And we haven't had, and DEQ is the one with the money. And since they are just now giving us this language, I would have a hard time believing that they would, say, oh, you're not acting fast enough. And then the next thing, if you remember last meeting, one item was continued was the Emergency Response Commission. But the other item that was not continued onto this meeting was, if you remember, we had Lightspeed Networks, a renewal of the franchise agreement. And I think the question from the city council was, can we get more? Do we have another rate and that kind of thing? Well, I looked up two things. One, what are we charging our other communication carriers franchise? We've got one with Charter that's at 5%. And the Lightspeed is at 5%. The statute allows us to go to a max of 7. So, and charter, by the way, expires in 2027. So it was a 10-year that we adopted back in 2017. So we got 3 more years on that anyhow. So the question for council is, before I bring the Lightspeed franchise back to you, do you want me to try for 7 or leave it at 5? And then the issue there is, this is very similar to that thing with the electric company. They pass the money, they pass the charge on to the customer. So really, we'd be imposing the other percentage on them. So you don't have to answer that question now. That can come later. Well, maybe not. Yeah, just let's bring it up later. We'll visit it back. And then, so yeah, for the last items, I would like to, I hate to do this, but because of the urgency, the big driver here is the loan agreement with the DEQ. Time is of the essence. That thing has been overdue for a long time. I mean, not overdue, but it's,
We have a
needs to be-
closing we're supposed to be getting towards.
We do. We're going to force extensions, but we want to be timely. So what I'd like to do is have that done as quickly as possible and not wait till the next meeting in November. So that means special meeting. And if we're going to do a special meeting, then I'd like to have a special meeting with that, the Lightspeed franchise, the cooperative procurement on the pay structure, and then a resolution adopting the 2 job descriptions, the recorder planner, and then the finance director admin position. And I would have salary information for you at that time with both those. So that's something to consider for a special meeting.
So maybe we could schedule that special meeting at the end of the meeting?
And
Got
then you could also at that time give me direction on what percentage you want on that Lightspeed stuff. And that's all I had for administrative report.
I just have 2 little questions for you. One is, I was wondering if you could, following up on that permit, maybe find out from the Army Corps of Engineers how long they think it's going to take. Just if we could, or I could reach out and send them an email and CC you. I think it would be great to just find out what they're thinking.
After the close of the comment period,
Yeah.
how long it would take them to process it.
Yeah. It would be
What
helpful.
I'd
Or ask
like,
Marlon.
yeah, thank you. I would prefer to go through our engineers first to see if they have any experience in that, and then anyway, but yeah,
Okay.
I can follow up on that.
And then the other piece that we had from the last agenda that we didn't hear you get back to us on is we were going to find out from Marlon how much time it would take to get back to work on that brick grant. Have you had a chance to track that down yet? Or
Yeah, not that one.
okay.
Yep.
So hopefully maybe we could put that on this agreement
Special
too,
meeting.
because we want to get going on that.
Okay.
I would say, with all of everything else. Okay. Any other questions for John? Anybody? Okay.
I had one and then I lost it.
Okay. It was pretty. That was a
It was
lightning-
that important. Yeah, no, it was.
lightning
Have another chance to talk.
I'll call you at midnight. Yeah.
Call me at midnight.
Okay, we have finance is the next question, but of course, we're mostly going to be talking to David individually, but if anybody has any major things to bring up, otherwise we'll just let everybody talk individually to David. Anything? Okay, Public Works, John, you.
So I did forget about the DEQ permit, but, or the core permit. So it did get submitted to the top 2 entities, but then we submitted it Wednesday with the help of Civil West to DEQ because they'll only take it electronically. So we had to set up an account and get it sent in. And Tina from Civil West, super informative, really knows a lot about it, helped us get through that process. So once we submitted it, then we will hear back from DEQ within 30 days. And then that'll tell us what our next step is. So all the entities, as far as I know, have it now. That's what I know about the permit. I do know that, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I think if I remember right, what she told me was the in-stream work has changed from July 15th to October 15th with no work between October and November 15th. That will make it extremely difficult to do dredging in the summertime when we don't have any rain, because then it stirs up the pond. There's no way for that sediment to go away. So that may be something that we're going to have to question whether we can get a variance to go into December and January or early spring, while it's still raining and we can generate enough water to flush it. So that road will have to be crossed when we figure out where we're at with the DEQ side of it.
Is there fish ladder concerns there or how?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was supposed to be
But
done.
do we have, what is our plan for?
They're We talked about this 2 years ago. There was supposed to be done by 2021, if I remember right, the original fish ladder. But I don't know that we went anywhere past that. It kind of got dropped and we haven't talked about it in a long time.
Gotcha.
The only other thing I really have that's important here, this is just weekly stuff. I've changed the way I'm doing them. I'm doing them for the month that I'm actually working in now. So you're getting a 3-week shot instead of trying to remember what I did last month. It just makes it a little easier. But the water report for the numbers, water sold, water made, all that will be for the previous month because we don't complete our next month billing until the end of October. And we actually found a cool way to print this all out. Keely sent me the report, so I'm just going to attach it for now on. And I'll still try to keep the numbers at the top of the page for you. But it'll show you all the cleans we charged to, all the different books, and then the total gallons sold and how many bills went out. So that should help you. Pat was concerned with having that information. The only thing we've really got major going on right now is we're fighting a flow pressure issue on the raw water side. So I've reached out for some help from the circuit riders, and it's one or two things, possibly, maybe a third thing, but either the pumps are beyond their lifespan and they're not pumping the way they should. That line's about 3.5 miles long. It runs from the end of Mill Road down Cemetery Loop Road, drops down to Gold Run Canyon, Stagecoach area, and then back up the hill to the top of Dee, and then it drops down Dee, or what would be 10th Street, 9th Street, 10th Street, down that huge drop, and it's running away from us. So we either got a complete buildup of sediment which in the line, so we may end up having to cut the line and trying to pig it, or we're going to evaluate the pumps first and figure out what our flow and pressure issue is. Maybe it is within the pumps, but what we did determine was the current, lost my train of thought. The pump hardware that turns on the pumps, the contactors, are late 70s or early 80s, and they're no longer supported. So we're going to have to do an upgrade to the controller to be it with VFDs and soft starts, and then probably pumps. I can't even give you an estimate. I know the pumps would be probably 10 grand a piece. There's 2 of them for redundancy. The controls, I don't have a good estimate yet. So I'll bring that to you as soon as I find out which way we're going. We'll probably hire somebody to come in and do the pigging. It's not an involved process, but we're going to have to open up the main in a couple of places to be able to insert the pig and retrieve it. So there's a good chance of that big valley that it drops down into Gold Run and goes back up to, there's 300 foot of fall and 150 feet of fall with about 160 feet of rise there. There's 160 feet of rise at coming out of Hubbard's Reservoir. So by the time you do all the math, the total head is around 400 feet, and those pumps are rated for 190. So I'm thinking we need to upgrade our system. So I'm going to have the experts work on this pumping thing here with me so I don't buy some important stuff I don't need. But that's where we're at on that. And then the only other thing I have really important is that cleaning of the hummus pond by Herds Farms. Now, I thought for sure, me and Ann made sure that was in the budget, but I went through the budget and I cannot find it.
I could not find it either. And I talked to
Okay.
David Johnson about it the other day, and he said, I've never heard of that before. So I was going to tell you, I meant to tell you today, you better go and talk to David about that.
So it's the estimated cost is about 190,000. Hasn't been done in 30 some years. It's at full capacity, and if we don't, we're going to have a huge problem. So Mr. Hurd's going to come up mid-November, early November sometime, and we're going to evaluate the pond, the depth, the cubic yardage, and all that. See if that number's still correct. And then he said, I don't need the whole 190 up front. The city can make payments.
Great.
But we really have to keep moving on this because this would be a violation in our NDBS permit. So it's something that's got to be done, but I could have sworn we had it in the budget. So I don't know what happened. And so that's pretty much the 2 major things that we have going on right now.
Okay. Any questions further? Thank you so much, John. My gosh, your report is always, well, everybody's report is always quite dynamic. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next up, hey, Chief Hobart, do you have anything to say? You're up on the police? Okay. Anything from planning? See Greg's here, anything? Okay. The mayor's report, we don't have the mayor here, so we will move on to the liaison reports. Brett Webb, anything from the port?
Nothing significant to report at this time.
Okay. Perry, anything from school?
Nothing at this time.
Greg Tidy, anything from fire department?
No, not right now.
Okay, I will do the watershed report. I put it into my thing, our written report down, and I will just add further
Where's that at, Ann? Or,
on page liaison.
no page numbers. That's always really helpful. Page numbers are awesome.
It'll be on there for next month.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah, it's in, I think it's after the finance report is where it should be. Yeah, okay. So
Hi, guys.
a couple of things I've been working on. We're going to deal with the IGA in a little while, but the exciting thing I wanted to tell you about is, or two things, is one is that Port Orford recently received a grant to get assistance to apply for grants. And so John and I met with CCD and a woman from the Land Trust Alliance, and they're going to help us look for two grants. And we proposed two projects. One is to find funding to dredge our reservoir, so we have money to do that. And then also working on that culvert that's up, that failing culvert up in our watershed. So these are the two priorities. These are for grants that help water quality and habitat. And so those are the two that we're working on. That was exciting. And then also, as John pointed out, today we went on this really cool field trip. John Isidore and Wade and Linda Tarr and I and John. And anyway, we took the fifth graders out. It was really fun. And it's just great to show them our watershed and to be reminded of that fabulous system that we have. Yeah.
The signs in those pictures were purchased with grant money, and those are for public outreach and education, and those are going to be posted. They're very nice. They'll be posted in the watershed area, but I thought it was neat to have the kids see, what we're doing.
Yeah, and it was really fun, John. At the end, we said, I read the sign to them and said, well, why do you think there should be no why is it authorized personnel only? And they were a little bit, didn't know. And John told them why, which is we don't want that water to get polluted. So it was perfect. It ended up being a good teaching moment too. So anyway, that's it. You guys can read the rest of my report. Okay, Greg Tidy, would you like to give a parks report?
Parks, awesome. Last Wednesday, the park hosted 140 plus kids from 7 different schools for the Cinnamon Roll Run. It was actually pretty cool. We volunteered again. That was a lot of fun. Next Saturday, October 28th, we have a 100-person disc golf tournament, and we have 98 people prepaid. And of the 98, 90 are coming from outside Port Orford. So tourism and everything else. So it'll be fun. We're gonna decorate it. We have a DJ. We have food trucks. We're just trying to make it a fun, inviting thing for everyone in town to come to. And that's about it. We're looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, Tim, is there a TLT report?
Excuse me, no TLT report, but we still need TLT members.
Are we advertising for that?
I think we decided that we should all try to recruit from our friends. So
What does it say? What's our,
City limit.
right. But what's our governing body rules tell us to do? Is it to each have a friend, or does it to say to advertise? Because we don't get to just decide what we want. If there's rules, we need to follow the rules.
I don't know, maybe Tim knows that. I think that's what we were trying to figure out, how we would recruit people. And that was just kind of an idea somebody thought of.
And some places do it just like that.
Yeah.
They do. But I think it's probably specified somewhere, and we want to be sure we do it right, especially when it's
Tim,
tax dollars.
do you remember that? Is there some specific way we're supposed to advertise for TLT members, like put it in the paper versus just trying to recruit people that we know and encouraging them to apply?
It's been done both ways. We've recruited folks in the past, and we've also put out notices.
That's great. That's a great picture.
Okay, well, so maybe what we need to do is just try to get try to see if we can get some people to apply, and then we have to get on it, because if I remember correctly, Tim, last year you were describing how we kind of fell behind so easily, and this is the time of year we really need to get it so that the committee can be working next winter. So
Have you received
Correct. Thank
applications?
you.
You've never received no applications for the TLT? Okay.
So if any citizens out there are listening, want to apply to be on the TLT committee, it's a great committee to engage in because there's only, I think, 1 or 2 meetings that happen. And it's a great way to help figure out where some of the money goes to in our community. So it's kind of a fun committee to be on. So I guess you can get an application at City Hall if people are, is that right, John Huddle?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, on to the next thing, Main Street. Gary.
Main Street's going to be opening the visitor center next week.
Wonderful.
So that's kind of neat. And they, I can't remember if the proposal came through, but they've been working on the bike racks, and they have a bike rack meant for the visitor center. And so they're looking for approval to put one in. There were pictures.
Yep.
Susan wanted it outside the window where one of the benches is. Would move the bench over.
They look good from Parks standpoint, so I talked about it. I don't think there's anything, I was gonna have them just direct it to him, just to make sure there was no water or anything right where they
Oh,
want to
right.
drill into the concrete right there.
We could actually mount it.
Yeah.
If you used to.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
tell me where it's at and we could take it down there and mount it.
Where's
yeah,
that
those
kiosk gonna
pavers, so
go?
Susan was
What's that?
thinking the
The kiosk?
pavers would have to.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. They're all
Picked
throughout
up
town.
and then-
Main
That's
Street.
the
Yeah, I think they
in
have
the
10 of
ground,
them.
you
The
know.
old
So
one,
they've just been
the
dotting
old
them
one was
along
on the
101.
back side of
The
that
new one from the,
sign that has the rocks on it.
or,
Was
supposed to
mounted
be,
on the
it's supposed to
back
be there
side of
5 years
that
ago.
sign. You know, the one that says.
The
Battle
Redfish
Rock,
Rocks
that wood
interpretive, the
rock thing right in the middle.
video.
Okay, you guys, we got to
Right behind it.
hey,
Sorry,
one conversation at a time.
sorry.
Okay, so did you get the answer to your question, Brett?
No. No, my concern was, we spoke about, compliance with our TLT tax rules, and that is to report that the task has been completed, and show proof that that has been done. We know that there's some things that haven't been done, and then that brought up the kiosk, the video kiosk at Battle Rock that was interpretive center for the Redfish Rocks deal. And I was wondering, did that? Yes.
It's installed.
Okay, thank
The
you.
interpretive thing is all.
That's good. Okay, great. Thank you. I should
Okay.
go there more often.
Okay. Anything else, Gary?
That's it for Main Street.
Okay, on to the Emergency Management Committee.
Unfortunately, the container on Jackson Street got broken into the last couple of weeks, and some things that the school had put in there were taken. So we're looking into trying to figure out another way to secure the containers.
Bummer.
And then we'll be hopefully talking about the emergency.
What'd they get, Gary?
We didn't have an inventory on the stuff, but there was like some cooking equipment and some food items. And
The 5K that we did, that Dawn and I did for years, all went to that project, and it's kind of heartbreaking to hear that someone would break in there and do that.
yeah,
But my hope was that they took water, because that's something that you want to turn over.
no,
So
water's still there.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary? Then let's move on to Perry, the end-to-end, your report.
Do we want to do it now or do we want to do it?
Well, I think there's 2 things. There's your report, and then we have the actual proposal that I believe was going to be discussed in
So
your
my
considerations.
report, there's really nothing additional in my report. I've talked to a couple of people about it this week who also had some concerns. There was one citizen that had some interesting ideas that I'm going to present to end-to-end. But that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, maybe when we get to that part of the meeting, we can ask you to help us if there's any more to say. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to old business. And so because I'm the person who's running the meeting, but I'm not the mayor, I'm a city council member, so I get a chance to talk about the things. And I have actually 2 things on this agenda that I would like to talk about this evening. So the first thing that's old business is this water curtailment ordinance that we've been dealing with for, we had it on the agenda back in May. we tabled it and we brought it back to a workshop. As you guys all know, we had a workshop, we had a very good conversation and got close to, understanding what we would like to do. We asked John to put something together, which he did. And I had a few amendments that I would like to propose. And I decided to, especially since I know Tim was going to be away, I decided to put him in writing because I find sometimes when people make amendments on the fly, it's a little bit difficult to see. And I thought if I put them out ahead of time, people could, put their head around them instead of just having to do it on the spot. So what I would like to do is maybe go through these, or I could, to be true to Robert's rules, I could make the motion and then explain and just tell you about them. Or I could tell you about them, then I can make the motion, I guess. What should I do? I'll tell you about them. Okay. The proposed amendment to number 1, I was going to suggest that we change it because one of the ideas that I had was we didn't want to have, people who are just in line for wells, like on the 3-year waiting list, to be excluded from this. The idea is to bring people online. I know, John, you had put in a number of things. I talked to Tim, and he had a concern that that people who have put in wells already and have invested, maybe we need to allow that. And so I would propose for this one to say the ordinance does not to apply to wells, to existing wells or wells existing at the time of the adoption of the ordinance. But not having, the question was applied for or under contract. And I don't know, John, if you want to explain that. Applied for, it just seemed like it could potentially, have a lot, like if somebody's on wanting to get a well and they're on the waiting list for 3 years, it could have a lot more come in. So that's my first one. Change number 2, just a little one, payable prior to planning clearance approval instead of well permit being issued. And then the last one, proposed amendment number 3. This is the thing that we actually discussed at the workshop, but we didn't ever quite nail down, which is, did we want to make the trigger 24 months, or did we want to make it change at the time, like the property changed hands? The original ordinance back that we looked at in May had a 24-month trigger, so that after the curtailment ended, following 24 months later, people had to come on. We had a discussion during the meeting that possibly instead we could just wait and do it the next time the property changes hands. I was thinking through this, and I really feel like the more I learn about the budget, that we do need to be bringing people on, and we have to have the expectation of people coming into our water system, because even though because it adds up to money that we can use for our water system. So if you got a chance to read what I said, each household pays about $400 a year. So if 10 of them happened in a year, that would be $4,000. It doesn't sound like much, but over the course of 10 years, that's 40,000 and on and on. And so that's the kind of change when John says, oh, I got to change out a pump or I got to do this. That's the kind of thing where the money goes into our capital fund and into our enterprise fund. So those base rates are important, and that's why I feel that way. But I put in both in there so that if everybody doesn't agree that way, I think we can come up with something to move forward. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to adopt this ordinance 1305-041 with amendment number 1, but described as this ordinance does not apply to existing wells existing at the time of adoption of this ordinance.
If I could, you kind of looked at me and asked.
Oh yeah, well, how about
in there?
Okay, I was
If
gonna
I
say,
could talk to it.
Okay.
Whenever you want me to, but
Yeah.
just want to give you the thoughts on that.
Yeah, go for it. Then I'll make the motion
So,
afterwards.
we're in curtailment, and we said, well, you can get a well, but then they have to wait around to get a well. And so, if they're on the list to get a well, and then we adopt the ordinance, and then everything changes on them. So I was just trying to do, it's called the shifting goalpost rule. Usually when someone has applied for something, you don't change the rules after they put in their application. So that's kind of what that concept is all about.
So is the application to who though? Is it
Whoever, whoever they're going to now, like the well companies, the water master, whoever, we have them applying to wells for. If anyone's so in other words, if people have a conversation with us and we say, can't have, you can't have city water, but you can have a well. And if they're just waiting on their well, and that's all they have left to do, whether it's in or whether they're on the wait list, we don't change the rules on them after they've already gone through that process.
is
They
there
might change their mind.
is there any way to get a handle on the idea that like, so we have, like what if I've heard there's like a 3-year waiting list, and so there could be like maybe 30 people that are going to come into our drinking water system, and then there's never going to be an expectation of them coming into our community system.
Yeah.
So
Unless they, but
But-
also,
but
go ahead.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. What we end up with is redundancy. I mean, we could have a failure at our dam, and that's why I was wondering. I regret missing the workshop, but that's an opportunity to partner with these well owners, because if we lose our ability to provide water, they may partner with us to provide. That could be the plan B, is now you've got wells. I just don't, I mean, I hate the idea of I don't see the danger, I suppose. I don't see the danger in allowing, because they're still gonna, they meter the wastewater, right? And it increases what we can deliver to the potential. We're gonna need Pacific Gales and our outfall to be operating, and you can't let one go dry, right? You got to keep them flowing. So I think that, like you said, without growth, I think it's almost like it's like a gift horse to me, kind of, when I look at it, I think of how that can be a different look at it. I mean,
Juan?
Thank you. I'm trying to go back to the policy of the well policy. And again, mainly if I'm understanding, the driving force behind people even considering wells is because we can't hook them up to city water. And that goes to our production capacity. And our production capacity goes to the depth of the reservoir. And we're going to dredge that thing next summer probably. So will this whole thing be moot post dredging?
Probably not.
Okay.
There's other work to be done.
All right.
we don't want to dredge.
That was mine. Yeah.
Well, I was going to make a motion, and I can hear what John is saying. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any other comments to make before I make the motion? Then we can learn about it. Yeah.
I do. And when you make your motion, it's actually a motion to move it to a second reading. It's not a motion to pass, because this is an ordinance.
Okay.
So it has to be done in 2 readings. But I have some comments about this, and maybe your proposed change fixes one of them. But I was hung up on if a property is sold, they then have to hook up. Because if you are still in curtailment, there are properties that are going to need to be sold that are on wells. And so what does that do in that situation? Let's say this passes, I put in a well, and then for some reason I need to sell the property, and the city is still under curtailment. Does this mean I cannot sell the property because that property will not have water? But your 24 months following fixes that. So if you're going to pass this, that would be my recommended language, because if it hinges on the property being sold, I think there are issues there. The other issue that I have is that I think that there are areas, and Mr. Isidore can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are areas in Port Orford that even when we are not under curtailment, we do not have the capacity to serve without some extensive infrastructure upgrades.
Correct.
And so
I think that you can't ignore those properties because in the past we have looked at those properties and said, well, you can put in a well. That's how you can have water. And this sort of does away with the ability to do that. And I'm not exactly sure where those properties are, but I think Dee is one of them. And maybe there are some others in town. So I think that it does need to be dug a little deeper as to, is this appropriate across the town?
Okay, well, it sounds like that's a pretty serious situation. So Shayla, just so you know, the language, the 24-month language, and pretty much every other part of the language except for that first one was the one that Gary and Crystal brought us in May. So that was, it's pretty much exactly the same, except for John added this grandfather clause, which we discussed, that first amendment. So that's the one thing that was added. And then we discussed possibly changing 24 months to the change of hands. That was a change from what. So, but what you're saying is even if we had all that, there still are places. This is supposed to be for times of curtailment only. I mean, the way that actually, when I was trying to do amendments, I was thinking this is for curtailment only. And so if we do this thing about 24 months, it's sort of like during this time of curtailment, if you look at the whole thing, you know, the purpose is to allow development during the city while we're under curtailment. And so, you know, it's kind of like it doesn't apply to wells that are there, but it applies to that. It was sort of this thing. This is the thing Crystal was really trying to get at, because if you look at the rest of the zoning ordinance, it kind of has sections that say you have to hook up and all that kind of stuff.
And I understand that, which is why I think that your 24-month period, it works. But at this point, there is no estimate as to when we will be out of curtailment. And to say that a property can have a well, but at the time it's sold, it has to hook up, it may not be able to be hooked up.
Well,
and we don't have a time frame.
Yeah. Well, I propose to change that. I want to go back to the 24 is what I'm proposing in my amendment. So I'd like to make the, can I make?
Would it be 24 months after curtailment or transfer of property, whichever is later? I mean, because it seemed like the council.
24 months following the repealment of policy, curtailment policy.
Okay.
Supply up to 24 months following the repeal of the curtailment policy.
Sure.
Now,
But I
Pat,
feel like the council at the last meeting said they liked the time of transfer.
at the last meeting, we talked about that as an option. We also talked about the idea that we talked about it. If you look at the final considerations, the idea that just generally we should do it like for houses that are wells. But I think there was a mixed feeling about it. And I think that there might be enough councilors who support the 24-month. So I would like to make the motion to that effect. And so I will try to make the motion right now. I make a motion to adopt ordinance 1305-041 without amendment 1, so just as is on number 1, with amendment 2 and amendment 3 as described in the memo shared with council. And so that simply means changing payable prior to the well permit being issued to payable prior to planning clearance approval, and making the trigger 24 months following the repeal of the curtailment policy.
I'll second that.
Any further questions or discussion?
And this is for second reading, right? Correct?
This is for the first reading.
Yeah, and the amendment number 2, payable prior to what you're changing that to payable prior to planning clearance approval. Payable.
So basically, this is like the person comes into the office, they have to show that they have water on their lot.
Right.
And so the payment goes to the city. So it just seemed like that made sense rather than payable prior to the well permit being issued, because the city doesn't issue the well permit.
Okay, so, all right, the permit. Gotcha. Yeah, That was.
And can you,
Yep. Tim?
oh, I don't know. Was Brett done?
Yes.
Okay, and back to the proposed amendment 1, is that this ordinance does not apply to existing wells?
We're not using.
No, we're not using 1, so it's just going to go back to what was the originally proposed, which is the ordinance
Okay.
does not apply to wells existing, applied for, or under contract at the time of adoption of this ordinance.
Thank
We're
you for
just
the
gonna
clarification.
not do number 1. Okay? Any other
Thank you.
questions or concerns? Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. Greg Tidy,
Yes.
Gary Burns,
Yes.
Perry Rask,
Yes.
Brett Webb,
Webb, yes.
Tim Pogswood,
Tim, yes.
and yes. Okay, so we passed it unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for your
For
attention to this.
clarification, you've passed it to a second.
Oh,
reading.
yes.
You have not put the order.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Shella.
We have to wait a month for the second reading?
Well, we could put it on that special meeting if you guys schedule one.
Like that, okay.
Oh, that'd be
That's it.
perfect,
Get it done.
because it'd be good to get this going, it seems
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Is this?
I was wondering if we ought to do it
You want to advertise?
2 readings
or
today, but
is-
I don't think we're prepared for that, so let's just do that.
Next meeting will be good.
Okay,
I guess.
so we're moving on to the next thing, which is the resolution adopting an agreement with the Curry Soil and Water Conservation District for weed abatement in the watershed and other city property.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
One question.
Yes, Tim.
Has this been ran by David Johnson?
Did you say by David Johnson or by Shayla? David. Yes.
David Johnson.
Yeah, right. You did, John? Or I ran it actually by,
I don't have recollection of that.
I ran it by actually Dina to ask her about like the how if the way the accounts, the timing on the accounts and stuff, and she said yes. So I ran it by Dina.
Okay.
Any other questions? I just want to say the thing that's cool about this is Aaron Minster has money to do fire risk reduction around our community, and so it's a great opportunity, I think. Okay, so I will call for the vote. Perry,
Yes.
Brett,
Webb, yes.
Greg Tidy,
Yes.
Gary Burns,
yes.
Tim Pogswood,
Tim, yes.
and yes. Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda, continuing action items, is recognizing the Emergency Management Commission. And is this the second reading, John, or is this the first? No, we didn't do the first reading last time.
2 readings.
Right, but you're able to adopt this at a single reading as long as it was advertised a week ahead of time, and it was.
Okay. So, John or Gary, do you want to say anything about this? Or we did discuss it last time, so does somebody could just
I feel like everyone's
entertain
pretty well versed on this. Unless there's any questions, I think you could just entertain a motion.
Yeah, let's just entertain a motion then.
I'll move to adopt the Emergency Response Commission ordinance 2.0.
Okay, any questions? Further discussion? Okay, I will call for the question. Greg Tidy,
Yes.
Gary Burns,
Yes.
Tim Pogswood,
Yes.
Perry Rask,
Yes.
Brett Webb,
Webb, yes.
and Velisis, yes. Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
Good job.
so
Thank you for that, Gary.
we're moving right along, and we are now down to under considerations this discussion about N2N, which we have here before us the proposal that was given to us last time by N2N. And John, you're asking us here, I saw, for direction. Did you have anything you wanted to say at the outset about this yourself? Or,
No, it's just in my memo. This was given to us at the end of the last meeting. And so I think my job is to work on a lease, but these are, from what I could tell, proposed terms to put in it. And I want to know if there's anything that you want me to not even get started on in there, or if everything's fair game. Just looking for some direction, I guess.
okay. Perry, do you want to help us understand anything further on this?
Not really. I think, like I say, I did have one citizen talk to me about an alternative that I thought might have some bearing. Um, it was to prevent camping instead of designating the area, just simply prevent camping within 100 feet of the school or a designated distance, whatever it is, or the parks or residential areas. And I think it's worth considering. That's my only contribution.
Yeah, I saw that too, that some other communities are adopting those types of ordinances, right?
Now, so that would not be designating one place to be a camp
That's
Right.
correct.
and just allowing it on any public property? Or,
Not
No.
within a certain amount of feet from residential property
There
or
was,
parks.
I think, like Buffington Park, because there's some city properties that have previously not allowed camping to begin with. So
Some places also have it not within distance of retail area too. They have like a whole prohibition on downtown retail zones, all kinds of stuff.
I think that is definitely worth exploration.
Why don't we, just to give some order to this, why don't we just, I'll ask people, we'll just go around and people can give a quick and dirty on where they're at on this proposal maybe, and then we can figure out if we have any further direction. Greg Tidy, would you mind? Do you have any thoughts on this? Greg Burns? Gary Burns. Losing my mind temporarily.
I'm not sure that we need to be thinking about 6 months out. Some of these look like they would need to be fleshed out a little bit better before we actually agree on them. But the part prior to 6 months, it seems like it would behoove us to. I just don't know what our other plan would be if we didn't try to work with end to end at this point. Would we be trying to get them to pack up each morning, or is there an alternative plan?
We have an ordinance in place. It isn't being enforced. That's it.
But we're not sure if
We have an ordinance in place on the books and we don't enforce it. That's what's going on right now. That's it. Our ordinance says they leave every day. It's not enforced. So we'd have to change our ordinance and everything else to do this agreement. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Gary, anything further? Brett, do you want to?
Oh,
A quick
yeah, sure.
take.
It's a difficult situation here that we face. In my opinion, concentrating something like that is I don't think it necessarily serves that community or our community. And I love the idea of exclusionary zones. And I mean, like, what are we going to do? Just let them camp everywhere? Yeah, that's what they used to do. And there was never a problem. I mean, there was never a problem. Of course, homelessness is a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem. What I'm saying is to the city to raise, you know, it just, you know, when you concentrate it, you know, victims of domestic violence could be forced to have a tent 4 feet away from a violent drug addict, and not to say, hey, I've been a drug addict. I've been a drug addict. That's not my point. I'm not saying that's bad. Nothing. I'm just saying it's scary to this person if she has dealt with abuse. It just seems to me like man, that's just a petri dish. And I don't mean that derogatory either. I just don't know that the council has determined whether it wants to move forward with concentration of this type of activity or element, or if we weren't more satisfied with nothing.
But they could still camp where they're camping.
No, they couldn't. Not if we said you can't camp here.
Oh,
Yeah, you create exclusionary zones and then offer, many places that they can camp, like anywhere. I mean, you can camp almost anywhere. Just like, I think back on like the medical marijuana and then the recreational marijuana. It was like 1,000 feet from here and no this and no that. And then we're talking about a little bit of reefer or something. And then now something like this could hugely impact a community, the surrounding businesses and the residents. And it just doesn't seem like, now the neighbor to neighbor piece, have we seen the incorporation documents, or is it,
I haven't looked lately.
because as I don't recall it ever being demonstrated to us that there was officers or so forth. And if we're going to get involved with something like this, then they need.
Wait a second, excuse me. You're out of order. We're taking time for the council to go around and say what they want to say.
And just one more thought was that it needs to be, they need to have public meetings. If there needs to be a president, a secretary, there needs to be minutes that are kept. If they're going to go, if we're going to partner with a nonprofit, nonprofits have requirements. And where are those documents available? Those types of things are all very important to keep everybody out of trouble. It's
Okay.
Dotting your I's and crossing your T's are really, really important.
Okay. I'm going to turn it to Tim Pogswood and then I'll end up. Tim, can you just give your kind of quick take on this proposal, and then I'll share my views.
So the biggest question I have would be for Shayla is, does this proposal relieve the city of any liability? And before she answers that, maybe, we're on to something here. 500 feet from businesses, 500 feet from residences, 1,000 feet from schools. We didn't seem to have, well, I shouldn't say we didn't seem to have quite the problem, because Mr. Burns and I walked a couple of the parks and saw quite a mess way before the encampment at Ray's. So I'll backtrack on that a little bit. That's it for me.
Okay, I'd just like to, if we'll come back to asking you that question, Shayla, in a moment. I want to just say what my thoughts are. I wanted to just say that I was really hopeful that this collaboration could work and add value to our police effort and to our community. But we have had tried to do this for 3 months already, and we've been getting a lot of complaints from citizens about what's going on in this camp. And I think that's made me, I think, change, or makes me worried about how viable this location and proposal can be. So I wanted to, some of the other things that have come up to me is just that this does take time for our city, and that we don't have. But Shayla, if you can answer Tim's question now.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to go first or Shayla.
Okay, you can go first, Perry, to finish up your counselor.
So I just want to say that they are incorporated. They do have officers. They do have public meetings. We don't have anything that shows us their 501c3 designation, but the other stuff we have had that. And Tim alluded to the fact that, yeah, there was a problem before. It was more of an individual problem instead of, all located in one spot, which I think is maybe not working out as well as we had hoped. And, Brett, you mentioned that we have to have public meetings, and we've had, several public meetings. And I think that we have a pretty good idea how people are feeling. I feel the same way that all of you do, that this is a very, very difficult topic. I think, so it's been 3-4 months now that we've been doing this. So we're right up against the 6-month mark already in the experience. And I have to agree, I'm not sure that this is working out the way that we wanted to. And I would like to propose that, well, one more thing first, excuse me. We're still just talking about all we do is provide the property. We don't do the other stuff. But I think that perhaps we need to have a workshop again and figure out if there's a better way to do this.
Are you saying a better way to, you mean a different plan altogether
Yes.
or another thing? Okay, thank you. Shayla, do you want to just comment on this in terms of liability? And the other question I had for you too is, I know last time you brought up the thing of like you were wondering about the lease idea and think kind of had some questions. So I was wondering about that.
I don't think that there's anything the city can do to completely escape any liability. I do think that some of these things, like requiring this entity to have this increased liability insurance, is helpful. The city would be named as additionally insured on that. Some of these requests, though, of the city of Port Orford doesn't remove the city from being intertwined in the process. If the city is going to do the landscaping for privacy, and the city is going to do the signage for the property, that's not exactly turning over a lease to another individual to control the land. The city is still involved in this. So if we're going to undertake that type of agreement, I think it needs to be crafted very carefully. I was actually trying to look at another code that I'm familiar with in regards to other time, place, and manner restrictions, like making sure that certain areas of town they are allowed versus others where they are not, and having time frames of how long they can be in one place and how closely grouped they can be with one another and things like that, which other communities are doing, rather than selecting one place where they are all congregating. So that may be something that you want to look into so that you don't have a camp, so to speak.
I think, to me, hearing Terry come and the whole staff of Rays come tonight, I mean, that is a pretty, you know, powerful thing, because it just sounds like they have really been up against it. And
Has anybody walked through there today?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Me too.
anyway.
What, 9 tenths there now?
I think I counted 11. I don't know. I can go count again. My simple question: has anybody walked through there, given our current ordinance?
Yes.
So to me, okay, so John is looking for direction. To me, some options, I'm going to throw out paths. I'm not going to say what, is that we could continue down this first path of trying to work with end-to-end for in that area until we figure out the next thing, which I think people are feeling like this is not working. So we got to figure out something different. The other thing would be we could enforce our ordinance now and also keep working on an alternative, which would be to perhaps investigate these other ordinances that communities are doing. And then the option would be, of any of those things, would be to, I just have to say that I really appreciate what the end-to-end people have been doing in our community. And I think whatever we do, the option would be to ask you guys to continue to participate and figure out how to be helpful, understanding that we have the whole community in the city and a lot of things that we have to balance. But anyway, those are the options that I see. Does anybody have any other ideas?
No, I agree. I do think that we should not enforce the ordinance while we're doing this discussion. Honestly, I think it would make the problem worse. with the rains coming. I think that people would be hanging out in Rays more. But yeah, I think we need to re-examine.
I have a question. So put this on here for council consideration in some direction. I've heard some stuff today, and it sounds like I've heard two things. One is, you know, the neighbor to neighbor agreement question, and two is either enforcing or changing our ordinance question. And what I'm wondering is if we change our ordinance, will we even have to have a neighbor to neighbor agreement? In other words, what I'm hearing is we might change our ordinance to be a zone exclusionary ordinance so that the population could be dispersed and I suppose allowed to be dispersed, and we would only enforce exclusionary zones and say you can go somewhere else. Then we wouldn't have a location and we wouldn't need a location for end to end, and end to end could go and deal with the population that they want to serve on an individual basis at every location they find them. So we wouldn't even need a lease with them. So I'm wondering, you'd go for that? All right.
Look, I know it's not my.
There's,
Wait a
yeah,
second.
sorry.
Wait,
sorry.
wait, wait.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You
Just-
could if it's will of the council.
Okay, yeah, just
But
wait 1 second. Yeah. The other piece that I wanted to ask John about is if there is any appropriate opportunity to get input from staff on this that are the law enforcement staff, like the chief, or do you feel like you have a grip on that you would like to report, or
just
could I
saw
ask
Andrew
him?
Perry give a thumbs up.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, Andrew had also submitted some emails floating some of the other ordinances from Klamath Falls and Coquille. So, and are those the disbursement ordinances and the exclusionary zone ordinance ideas? Okay.
Just sent you one from Hillsborough.
Okay. All right.
Actually put this in place. That's how we found out
Yep.
about
Okay.
that.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
so,
So
okay,
it sounds like,
that might be an
believe
item
it or
for a
not,
special meeting.
there's a lot of consensus on that. So
Can
that's
we
good.
suspend the ordinance?
So the question though is right
Is
now,
there a way to do a suspension?
what do we do between now and oh yeah, Tim Pogswood, thank you.
Should I ask?
Tim,
Okay, so Mr. Perry sent us some photographs today. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at those via email?
yes.
The conditions there today, I don't know if they were taken today or yesterday, look pretty bad. I mean, looked like to me there were stolen milk crates, boxes from Ray's. They look more like homemade boxes than they did tents. And at one time we talked about, having them take the camp down. I think there's merit in that. If we have them take the camp down, we don't end up with these makeshift houses,
Well,
I mean,
they'll be in other parts of the community.
right. But I would guess if we still kept that as part of our ordinance, that you had to break down your camp, that I would guess people would use, a tent that has poles. It's a lot easier to take down than a bunch of boxes. And I mean, some of those photographs were pretty bad. That's all I have.
So it sounds like the options that we have now would be to, if we want to explore the exclusionary areas, zoning, or not zoning, excuse me, the exclusionary approach, we could possibly do that at the next meeting, but between now and then, we have the option of leaving as is or enforcing our ordinance, or Brett, you were saying repealing our ordinance?
Well, gosh, are we allowed to just not enforce our ordinance? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It seems that's how you create liability, is when you make a law, a rule, anything like that, and then you just say, we're not going to enforce it. I know, but well, no, I mean, there's a million of them that are difficult to enforce, this and that, but that seem to affect the community to this magnitude. It seems like this is a winner. I mean, it is, and it's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what's going on. And we have an ordinance that's not being, I think it would be very hard to enforce it, period. I don't know what you would do. I don't know
Well,
how you do it.
I think we asked the chief a couple meetings ago on this, how would this ordinance be enforced? And
I don't know
I
that.
don't think, would you
maybe
like to
Hank could-
step up, Hank? Would you help us to understand if we asked you to enforce the ordinance, what would happen?
Enforcing ordinances as laid out previously at this point are going to fall in Shayla's wheelhouse, because I don't want to do anything that's going to get us hemmed up in a lawsuit. Happy to do it, whatever the council decides, but you guys got to weigh in with her and listen to what she has to say as far as keeping us out of harm's way legally.
I don't recall there being anything in that ordinance that would subject the city to litigation. The city has the right to implement reasonable time, place, and manner. Are you talking, that ordinance required packing up every night?
Every morning,
Every morning, but
every morning,
I have
8 a.m.
I have a question for the chief. I think Council President Velice's question more went to, you had spoken to even just a simple manpower resources every morning to have someone in, because the idea is every morning they would break camp. And so we would have to be there every morning overwatching the breaking of the camp and that kind of thing. And I felt like you at one time said we don't even have the manpower resources for that.
That will certainly be hit and miss, but we're anxious to try something. I really like what Andrew found this last week as far as what you were just talking about, exclusionary zones. To me, that seems brilliant.
Would they break down from the exclusionary zones? I guess they would.
Yes. Every day.
There would be reasonable time, place, and manner in those exclusionary zones. Yes, they would break down and have to, there would be requirements that if the council chose that, there would be requirements that they have to move along so many feet every day.
But our
They can,
ordinance enforcement is complaint driven.
correct.
So
We had a room full of complaints.
I mean, like if we were if things were dispersed, it would be a lot less likely for complaints to even be fielded. So enforcing would be less likely. It wouldn't be needed. There's.
Well, I'm talking about just like right now.
That's
So
what I
like
understand.
tomorrow morning,
I understand.
or how we get to, if we decided to enforce our ordinance as opposed to the existing ordinance. I'm talking about the time between now and presumably we give our staff direction to do research on these other ordinances that people have put in as a priority. In the meantime, between now and then, what are we going to do? Because it does, to me, hearing from Terry and the staff that, I kind of feel like we don't want to we need to do something. And so I'd like to understand what would that be to more, if we decided to enforce.
So the way our ordinance is currently written is that you cite the person into municipal court, and it's what's called a violation. And then the second offense after a conviction of the violation, so it has to go through the entire municipal court system and then get a conviction, and then they have to go back and reoffend, and that becomes a misdemeanor subject to arrest. There's always been a 72-hour under the state law allowance, and it's in our code, to remove the camp with a posted notice. But we have to put up a notice in English and Spanish, and that our code just basically followed state law on that. So we could always have had the power to remove the camps with a 72-hour notice, regardless of our requirement that they break camp every day under the reasonable time, place, and manner.
John, do we need a municipal jail? It's reasonable. It's a reasonable question. It's a municipal law. The county jail's full. The state police aren't going to enforce it. The county the county's not going to enforce it. So we have, what do you do with someone who has been to municipal court 4 times? You're not going to get any money out of them. It's again, I don't believe the reality is that there really can't. How do you enforce it?
Well, and we also have, my understanding is that some of these people have mental illness
Some-
to the level that, I mean, a violation is going to be,
Incomprehensible.
or just, it's not really going to matter to them.
Chief has something to say.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chief.
So on that front, I remember sending out a reply email on that subject, and one of the things you'd have to do when something turns into a misdemeanor is see if our municipal judge will even see it, if he would be willing to even see it in this court. And the second thing I checked into was the DA's office, who handles misdemeanors and felonies, wouldn't handle this. I've already been told no by them. No other city's doing that with their ordinance stuff that's misdemeanors. And the third thing I checked into was with the jail, and the answer was an absolute no. They can't handle the intake they have now of actual felonies and serious misdemeanors, so they would take a misdemeanor
It wouldn't be lodged.
arrestee
Right.
there to even fingerprint them and put it on their CCH. So that throws it right back into this court, and if Judge Milliman's even willing to see it as a misdemeanor, because right now all he sees is violations. So that's a first step. You'd have to check with him and see. He would know. I'm sure he's been to enough judge conferences to know what he can and cannot do and what he's comfortable doing in this court.
There was a question early on that I don't think we got an answer to. Is it okay for us to elect not to enforce an ordinance?
I don't think it is.
I'm asking Shayla.
I'm going to go on record
think-
as saying I oppose to not enforcing, whoever's watching, the Ethics Commission, whoever, I'm telling you right now, I am not going to put myself in jeopardy by supporting the non-enforcement of any ordinance or the city. That's it. That's
I
my
think
disclaimer.
that those are two different issues. I think that you have the just flat not enforcing your ordinance, and then you have the practical aspect of being unable to enforce it.
If you
Just
know you can,
because
so.
we don't have the manpower to do so. I think that's a valid issue.
Thank you.
So Port Orford has always operated on complaints. The practical reality of dealing with this issue on complaints stretches that timeline out considerably. And so you get a complaint, you cite the person, they are brought into municipal court in 30 days, maybe, depending upon that timeline. The judge has the ability to look at that. And my experience with Judge McMillan is he's a pretty compassionate person. He listens to the stories, he listens to the situation, and he chooses punishment accordingly. I don't think that you have the ability to just ignore the code on the books without a formal council action.
Which I believe we had, didn't we?
If I could,
I think we just.
I think, yeah, it was just a direction to, so if you're looking for a game plan going forward, here's one possibility. The enforcement of our current ordinance would be to issue them a citation for a violation into municipal court, and you can't do anything more to them until after the conviction of that. That's like a 30-day window. But you can communicate with them, issue the violation, tell them they're in violation. So then, but you can't arrest them because it's a violation, all this stuff. I'm sorry, Chief, I'm speaking out of turn here. But anyway, but they're on notice that, and we would be technically enforcing our ordinance. Now, within that 30-day window, we can come back with an ordinance that says you can't even be here at all. But again, how do you enforce that? Are you going to physically pick somebody up and take them away? Or are you going to issue them a citation for violating our municipal ordinance? And then you got another 30-day window. So but I think it comes down to a communication thing and say, if you don't want to go through this hassle, you can go yonder, right? I mean, and isn't that the idea, is we're giving them an option of someplace else they can be.
If I may, I follow your train of thought on a daily violation, and there's nothing stopping us from issuing citations to the same offender day after day after day. They're just going to have court dates that stretch out daily. And that does give you, your point is well taken. That does give you about at least a 30-day window for the first person to be seen or the first offense to be seen.
And in that time, we can come back with the new ordinance with the exclusionary zone, where you can just,
That seems logical to
Yeah.
me, that the
And then-
exclusionary zone might actually solve a lot of this issue once
right,
that's.
yeah. And then again, it also perhaps, and I've heard N2N seem to be saying, yeah, we wouldn't need to even entertain a lease, and they would go serve the customer base on a, they'd know where they are. And they'd say, hey, you got to get out of here. Where are you going to go? We'll meet you there. I don't know how they do it, but that might, really resolve the issues.
I think it's sounding like we have a plan. I don't know. I still don't understand exactly how it's going to work because of the difficulty of actually moving these people or encouraging them to move elsewhere. But that is something I think that we would need help with from end to end. And our police officers, our law enforcement officers, maybe you guys could work together with.
There should be a committee.
Yeah.
There should be a committee comprised of one counselor or one representative from local law enforcement, one member from N2N, and the city manager and a citizen at large. And there's 5, and you work on the problem from this perspective of what's going to work for the city, and not what's going to work for the homeless population, not what's going to work for N2N, not what's going to work. I mean, that's what our commitment is to what's going to work for the city.
So Brett, do you think that at this point, what John just outlined to me sounds like, I don't know if we need to form a committee if we were going to do what he was suggesting. If we did form a committee, which I think, was brought up last time, and there could be merit to it to get it off of our docket so frequently,
Right.
would we have to form a formal committee,
So it
or
seems
could
to
it
me
be
like-
an informal
It seems
committee?
to me like there will be a continued problem with homelessness in this nation, especially in communities like this, and there needs to be something. And how involved your safety net is depends on each and every individual community. But it seems like to me that law enforcement is going to be a critical component of any type of smooth functioning, whatever you call that. And we have a fabulous community organization that's willing to take on the challenge, and a city that's broke but compassionate, I think. And how else do you, I just don't know how else you manage it. It seems like we will be facing monthly
Yeah.
issues
My
rather than a
question-
report from a
My
committee.
question was just the thing about, I believe, John, you told me at one point, if you were going to forming a committee, you have to,
Oh, we do like we did with the emergency.
do we have to do that, or can we just have an ad hoc committee for
Like the watershed.
like the water? Well, we're still
There-
figuring out what the water.
Well, we wouldn't have an ad hoc. Whoever it is would have an ad hoc.
Well, so if I could, it sounds like, again, before we were talking about 2 things, 1, a lease, 2, a ordinance change and ordinance enforcement. And now we're talking about a ordinance change with some enforcement and a committee. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I don't think we have to have them both right at the same time. And the committee issue seems like a more, the ordinances are already existing in other jurisdictions, all this stuff. I think we could do again, we can enforce the ordinance on the book. That's issuing citations and educating them and saying, we've got another ordinance coming down the pike that you can't be here, but you can be somewhere else. We also, I recommend we follow the state law that's in our ordinance about the 72-hour posting of the notice in English and Spanish, because that always allows us to clean up their camp. And so if they know we can clean up their camp and we say, but if you go over here, we won't, because you're in our exclusionary zone here and you're not there. And then in the meantime, we get the committee to do stuff. But if you think that forming a committee and then having a committee study it and then come back to us, I don't think that's going to be
No, John,
Okay.
what I'm saying is an ongoing committee
Okay, good.
that works with
All right.
that population, with this fabulous group
Yeah.
and the government and law enforcement. It will be, perhaps first responder of the medical first responders, the ambulance people may have a seat in something
And
like
it would be
that.
great if we ever get public health of some sort back
Right.
in our community to have a seat. I wanted to just ask a question, John, staff-wise, and maybe the chief too. I don't know how you guys are interacting with end-to-end, but does it make sense to have like one of the law enforcement people be the person, like have Andrew be the person that can?
He's already on it.
He's on it. Okay.
But I mean, the committee that was kind of formed the other day, you asked me if you could participate. I said, absolutely.
So I don't know if I'm just thinking about staff commitment to implementing this, and that would be to my mind having a staff person who's kind of working on it from the law enforcement would be helpful,
Well,
just because
I-
so we're clear.
I mean, I would put chief in charge of assignments for his
Yes.
shop, but at the same time, I don't mind talking about the committee idea, but I would like to get clarity on one idea at a time, because there's a lot of urgency on the idea, and so if I would, we're already talking about a special meeting because the other items I presented in the management report. We've got a great head start on a new ordinance. We've got an existing ordinance that I believe we can enforce through the citation, which is essentially an education component of the people there. We could tell them, here's what this new ordinance is looking like, and you might not be disturbed by us. You might not see us too much if we don't get any complaints if you're, these areas. That may have a immediate impact on resolving some of the complaints that we've been hearing about. Then for the long term, so this is short term, long term. And then the long term, we go with, Councilman Webb's and everybody else's concept of the committee. So I don't know, Chief, did you follow even my logic track there? Did that make sense?
Yes, I did, and it seems very logical, and we're willing to give that a try. The need to change something is clearly immediate. Watching the people from Ray's here tonight, we can't just not do something, so we're willing to try that as long as we're not getting ourselves hemmed up legally. We're happy to do it.
And then we wouldn't need the lease, so it
Yeah.
solves, it takes care of a lot of things very, very in short order.
So we do the cleanup, you're thinking like the 72-hour?
Well, we post a
Notice.
notice of the cleanup in 72 hours, and I'm hoping that would have what's called voluntary compliance, especially if they knew that we were coming up with an ordinance that would say, if you're in these areas, it's not you're outside of the exclusionary zone, and then it's complaint based.
You're acting like we have a ton of areas. I'm just saying, you're acting like, oh, I'm gonna stop, because we're getting way ahead of ourselves thinking that we're gonna disperse these people into a whole bunch of property that obviously we don't have.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, people just came over here complaining about 18th Street and 101. If we give people free for all of the city-owned properties, except for exclusion zones. Excuse,
Sure. Sorry, Lauren. Greg, I've all along, I've been actually, that's why I've actually thought the one space was better, because I've been worried about people going all over the place in town and thinking it's better that people are in one place. I've had input from Andrew suggesting that he thinks a lot of the conflict comes from people being together, and that maybe disbursement could be better. I honestly think that that we're on a journey, and that we're not going to get it right the first time, and that we may go one way and it's not going to work. We're going to go another way. It doesn't going to work, but maybe along the way we learn things, and I don't know.
Obviously, it's going to take time, and I understand that. It's not just look at what happened just today. I mean, I purposely go through the camp just to walk through it, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Progressively. And there's only, and I'm not being rude, there's only one person or one group that says that it's a great thing. And I've got everyone else in town that literally that comes in here and they've shown it, and they don't like it. They don't like what's been happening. They've seen the progression. We've seen tons of tourists say even to, just like Terry said and everyone else. And that's what this town is driven by during those summer months. And it was a horrible look. The day before our tourist season kicked, July 1st, we had a homeless encampment next to our only food desert of a town that we have to get groceries at. So it's not.
Well, to me, it sounds like people feel comfortable with this path of doing enforcement of our ordinance.
But yeah, but where are we going to put, if we don't put them in this one spot, that's the next part is we're talking about dispersing. Where are we dispersing?
Yeah, how can we do that? I guess the thing I don't understand is how can we, they can come back and sleep there at night, but we can't really get them to disperse until we get the new ordinance, right?
No, yes,
No, we could get
we can
them
get
to
them dispersed.
disperse from the current location with the existing ordinance and let them know where they have a landing spot with a draft of the new ordinance. I'm not sure if Andrew came up with the list of places they could be in the exclusionary ordinance that he was looking at, the model one. But that is the point Greg's making, right?
But you're talking about permanent sort of like stay. I'm still talking about just leaving 8 o'clock in the morning. That's still what I'm trying to talk about is not encouraging people to stay here and make a camp. I do exactly what the state makes us do. Why we're doing all of this right now is because of what the state mandated us to say, but we're not doing just that bare minimum right now. Yeah, we gave them a place, but we're not doing anything else that the state is.
That's right. That's what I was saying. We do what we said, which is issue citations and then post a 72-hour notice. And then, but again, even with our existing ordinance, Greg, it's a 30-day window after a citation.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think what's going to happen is if people had to pack up, obviously the problem's going to move. So then people are going to go into the library. Maybe people are going to go into Ray's. People are going to go to other places. And that's where
They'll get trespassed from that location and they'll hopefully be trespassed out of town in a sense. And they'll move on somewhere else. If they're causing that much of a problem, which obviously they are, we have we had a whole room full of his staff here tonight, not just the manager. We had the staff that has to deal and clean up the bathrooms and is scared to go outside. That says a lot. If I was the business owner or anything else, I'd be furious at this city council because we're not enforcing what we say to do. We're not doing it. So, I mean, it looks bad on us as city councilors that we're not enforcing a law that 4 of the 6 of us approved.
Well, I think the hope was that we were going to try to work out a situation where there was going to be added value from our community volunteers, and we were hopeful, but this is a really big problem. I mean, this is like a huge problem. So I think the piece that I still don't understand is if we start enforcing this, you were talking about, sweeping the camp at some point, giving a 72-hour notice or whatever. Would you wait to do that until we have a better sense of this other thing, or would you just start doing that? And if you did decide to do that, is that some way where we could collaborate with end to end and say, this is when we're going to do it? How do we do it to help support those people?
Collaborate. I mean, but we would be posting the legally required notice under the state law that we've incorporated the terms of and going from there.
How does that figure into our compliance with the new House bill?
It was part of the state law on the reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions after the new House bill. I think if we're talking about the same new House
I mean,
bill.
we can't tell them to move on though unless we have another place for them to go, correct?
To camp.
Well,
Camp. This is all about nightly stay.
I think so, but at the same time, what we would be doing is then it comes down to the enforcement piece. The key is identifying the disbursement areas. And then we would say, here's where you can go without this. So,
I think, John, I think what Greg is saying is right, which is for now with this ordinance, I don't think we tell them to disperse. I think we tell them you have to pack up in the morning. You can sleep here, but you have to pack up in the morning because our ordinance says you can't camp anywhere else except there.
yes.
And so we have to wait, is my understanding. We would have to wait until we line up something else to be able to move that way. And so it would mean in the interim, we would just be enforcing that you need to pack up and get out of here every day
And we wouldn't need a 72-hour notice for that because we already, in a sense, we've already made that our city law, correct, Sheila, that they're supposed to, every day, they're supposed to be gone. And do we just have to
Yes, but
post
the
that?
problem is that we have not enforced it and we have allowed that camp to remain.
I'm just asking legal wise,
I-
because
I
we're talking
think
about
that-
having to post a
I
notice.
think that because that camp has been there for the duration, that you do need to now do the 72-hour notice because you have established that campground.
Thank you. So it's two different things. One is a people thing and the other is a property thing. So the people thing is a citation, the property thing is a 72-hour notice. So, and so the people thing, we can start writing citations tomorrow. And then the property thing, you need to post 72-hour notice.
But recognizing that when we write a citation, it's not going to do any good. Is the thing. I mean, they don't, well, you can't pick them up and move them.
Yeah.
And they have at least 30 days
Right.
before they go to court. So
Well,
it's kind
but
of.
we've got 72 hours to move their stuff out from under
Right.
them.
Yeah, but then what? Now what's it cost to fill a dumpster up and take it to the dump? I mean,
Well, you're
That's
not
the thing,
taking
you
it to
don't
the
get
dump.
to.
no, well, you will after 30 days if they leave it and don't come back, then you get
You
to,
have
right?
to store it.
Right. Well, our ordinance says something like valuable things, and that those are subjective terms that you can't. I mean, a blanket with a hole into a blanket with a hole in it to a guy with no blanket. That's a valuable thing. And to me, maybe not, but the subjective terms in enforcement seems very it doesn't seem like the people that we're asking to enforce our laws are given the clarity that they need, and then you leave it to the courts. And everybody always complains about the courts legislating from the bench, and that's what we're going to end up with if we don't.
John, is it, or you'd be involved in this, I think, if,
I don't think so.
okay.
Well,
Nope.
you guys have the equipment.
Pretty
and the
sure that'd be the other
transportation.
John.
You have the
Um,
transportation stuff and the.
I do know that ODOT just went through this a couple of times on Paradise Point Road. And there's a state appointed liaison that came down and directed them on what was valuable and what wasn't valuable, what they could take and what they had to store.
Really?
So there's actually, yeah. So you can't just go in and clean up a camp, throw it away.
Right. You gotta have a container to store it.
Yeah, then you got to store it somewhere for up to 30 days. If they don't collect it at that point, you can throw it away. But
Well, what if one guy has a communicable disease?
exactly.
And then it's stored with, and there's where liabilities start to come into play.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that we're prepared for that.
We're not. I don't want to clean up camps. We've already worked on the one that's back on the back 40 for the new disc golf course area. And there's 4 or 5 dump truck loads of stuff back there.
And then citizen volunteers had to clean. I mean, a lot of
They did.
volunteers have cleaned these things up.
50-gallon bags out of that area.
So,
And that's kind of where they were before Rays.
Yeah.
They're back in the back 40. Nobody knew they were there but us.
So if
So-
I could, you've got some options. I think you've done a good exploration, you know. We're gonna look for council direction at the end. Don't need it now, but we've been here almost 2 hours, I think.
yeah, it's time. Okay, is it time to,
I don't know if.
oh
it's 2
yeah,
hours
it's
or 1
5
hour.
minutes.
Okay.
5 minutes. So, but let's, maybe we can try to wrap it up right now.
Okay.
I'm hearing that we want to enforce the ordinance is what I think I'm hearing from people. So is that something where we want to take a motion on that? Or is that something where we just want to give direction to staff to,
It's hard to say that the enforcement's a failure if you're not enforcing it. And I asked that months ago.
If you wouldn't need the 72 hours, just say we're taking over and we're gonna start doing our ordinance. And you gotta break down. Unless you wanna give them a 24 notice that you're gonna do it.
shall we, I feel comfortable, personally, I feel comfortable with this, with that direction, giving it to staff. I don't think we have to totally micromanage it, and we would have to rely on the judgment of chief and John to help us
City
figure it out.
administrator and police chief, under, you know, direction or with clearance from legal counsel, enforce the ordinance as written, you know, commencing tomorrow or whenever we reasonably can start, given our resources. And then if I'm not mistaken, the second part of that is come back to you at our next special meeting with a new ordinance.
And a
Having
report
the
on how
exclusionary-
it's going so
Okay.
far.
All right.
I thought Sheila said you have to post now that it's been established for.
So you,
Move
it would,
stuff, to
yes.
dispose of stuff, you do.
we're talking, so they can if they voluntarily move their stuff, that's the best scenario. But if they don't, then we move to the 72-hour notice.
I would just say that, but I would just hope that because our community, as Brett said, is a compassionate community, and that's just been such a struggle all along between that I would hope we can direct that however we move forward to enforce it, that it is done in a way that is with compassion.
That's my understanding of our law enforcement.
Okay. Is that sufficient direction, John?
I
Does anybody else have any?
summarized it and Chief
Okay,
put his finger up.
going forward with what John just directing. The first day we'll be contacting every single person in the camp and giving them the advisement of what we're going to be doing. So that first day this is your one warning. Starting the following day would be citations like every other ordinance we deal with.
And then if they don't move, we might go to a 72-hour notice.
We can do the 72-hour warning right that first day
Well, the 72-hour notice sign, I don't even know if we have them.
if you have them.
I don't have them.
Okay, once you
So
produce
we'd
them,
have to
then
go get those made. So there are steps, but again, I think if we start taking the steps, we'll see some progress.
okay.
And I would like to have somebody, or I don't know if Gary, if you'd want to do it, or some counselor to get back in touch with Terry. Somebody who knows Terry and just tell him that we're doing this.
Oh, I'll do that tomorrow.
That would be great. Okay. So we're at the 2-hour mark. We almost got through. I would love it if Pat came back and we were done with the meeting. Would that be cool? But we're almost done. We have one more item, 10B, which we can try to do, and then we're going to have to set up the time for the next meeting
We
and
also
for
have an
our
exec
executive session. So so I would entertain a motion right now to extend the meeting for a very short time so we can get these things done.
I'll move to extend the meeting.
That's subjective.
Second.
Okay, call for the question. Greg Tidy,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Tim Pogswood,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Brett.
Webb, yes.
Okay. I know.
Oh, I both said yes. Because I am. It's because I am.
I know you guys you're nice to me. Thank you for not giving me a hard time on my first meeting. But we're almost done, right? We're getting there. So, okay, the next item is this municipal court judge thing, and which looks like Judge Milliman has suggested that we. Oh, and thank you guys end-to-end people for coming tonight and for everything that you guys have done.
I know the rules, but this was a very complicated thing, and giving you some very quick input. And I just feel that I was in a room with people talking about me, and I didn't get it, and I was sitting there overhearing it. But that's okay. You guys need to understand, we had some information for you. You have no idea, or maybe some of you do, why the camp looks like it was.
Okay, Lauren, I'm sorry. This is the way that this is why, because we've had meetings going to midnight is why we're doing this. And so I'm sorry you feel that way, but.
Very complicated thing, and you missed the boat on this. Affects our whole.
Okay.
Community. The destruction of coast community was basically our downfall.
Right, I understand that. Yep.
But not a lot of people do, and that's a problem.
Okay.
If I could on this next item on the municipal court judge, all I'm looking for is direction from council. You've seen the materials. Do you want me to ask this person to come in for an interview?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Have we
that one.
advertised? Have we advertised for the position?
Is she just covering for Gary McMilliman?
I think it is it's a municipal court judge pro tem for when he's not available. And
Didn't have that surgery that he left us for. They denied the surgery.
right,
Didn't
advertising is
Oh.
optional.
You know what I mean?
It is.
It's optional. We got John instead of Gary getting surgery.
Okay, are there any other council considerations?
Well, are you talking, I'm sorry, regarding Mr. Milliman's
Oh, I thought everybody just said
Yeah, on
okay
that.
on that.
That was just to, do we want to bring her in for an interview?
Okay, all right. My question is that to interview one person for one job and not cast your net almost seems like you're hiring them.
Limited.
And while I'm fairly liberal myself, I would like to be sure that we maybe this is a Berkeley graduate,
It's what?
a Berkeley graduate. I'm just saying maybe there's other we've had pretty. I don't know this person. Do you know this person?
That's why you bring him in for an interview. That's the
don't
only
get the interview.
question is if you want to talk to him.
But the point is that I don't interview her.
You're gonna interview
She'd come before the whole council.
Okay. Secondly, is what's our plan B then? If we say, no, I don't want this one, what do we compare her to?
Well, you compare to Gary probably for starters.
But that's not,
Well,
I
this
just
is,
don't understand why. I like choices. Everyone goes, remember when old Boris Yeltsin went into the supermarket and he saw all the food and he said, wow, this is great. Choices are great. I like choices and to not have any,
Okay.
was it Boris Yeltsin? No, it wasn't. It was his,
Khrushchev,
yeah,
earlier,
yeah,
Khrushchev,
was it Khrushchev? No,
way
no,
back
no,
when,
no.
Gorby.
Gorbachev, yeah, Gorbachev.
It was,
So, but the thing is, I think this is just like a pro tem position, so it's just
if
somebody.
we don't know, that seems all the more reason to, I don't know what this is. Do you know what this is? What's it say? What's Gary say?
Well, it's just this, it looks like a woman who
Gary-
has really great
says the
credentials and she's
Yeah.
been appointed by other.
So should we read the letter?
Sure.
From Gary? The first sentence says, I am pleased to recommend the appointment of Cora Rose as municipal judge pro tem for the city of Port Orford. That seems like he's suggesting we
He's
appoint.
recommending.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his. So
Based on that recommendation, do you want to interview this person?
how many people? How many
Is there a
people?
motion to interview this person?
I don't object to the interviewer. I just don't, why don't we have more choices? Maybe there's no one else who would apply.
Well, it's a temporary thing.
I think he's just kind of suggesting, as Greg Tidy was saying, he has to have surgery. He needs somebody to fill in for him and he's helping us find a person. So I think that's sort of the, how it is down here. It's sort of hard. We have a hard time finding people to fill positions.
I agree. I don't see the clarity here in this letter. Maybe that's just temporary. It would seem like it would be like a fill-in,
I think that's what it is. It's just a fill-in. If he has a conflict on a case or
Right,
his
and
health doesn't allow him to be present for the case, then this person would fill in.
and his last sentence does suggest that. It's a little bit confusing to me.
I think he says your immediate attention. I think he probably has to do his surgery and he's not going to be here. But the reason he's recommending this woman, if you look, she's got all these, she's got all of her credentials and she's available and she's already been appointed to be pro tem in some of these other courts in our area. So I think what he's suggesting is she's been pretty well vetted and he thinks she's great. And so therefore it's a pretty good call. So anyway.
Yeah, we certainly the interviewer, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think there is consensus. Tim, anything to say on that?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I think we have consensus to interview her, except Brett doesn't like it, but I think everybody else
I
feels.
didn't say I don't like
Oh,
the
okay.
interview. I don't like not having choices.
Yeah, okay, so we got that. Okay, so that's it. Any other citizen or any other, I guess we do, it's not on here that we do,
There's this scheduled meeting on September 26th. That's not a Thursday, it's Thanksgiving. Yeah.
yes, we can't do that. We need to schedule this next meeting and John is not here right now. So what I'm going to do is we have left on our agenda is citizen considerations, counselor considerations and scheduling this agenda. Since John is not right here, but Hugo's here. So that means John may be coming back. I would like to open it up to the citizen comments. So do we have any citizen considerations at this time? Jen.
Hi, my name's Jen Head, 1437 Jackson. I would like to volunteer to be the community member at large if a committee forms about formulating a new ordinance for the homeless.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank the city council for moving forward with compassion and also acknowledging the hard work of Neighbor to Neighbor, because I know it probably feels personal to them that this camp is not working, because it was, they tasked themselves with managing it. But, there were a lot of other factors at play, and hopefully they're also willing to consider alternatives that are still in the best interest of everybody involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. Any other comments? Lauren?
Sorry, I blew my top. I just want to say when we took over the camp and Councilman Burns was part of it, there were 18 people in that site last year around this time. As they took over and they started making things cleaned up, they left. And by the time I became president, there were only like 7 or 8 left. Tanya Ray Miller and Coast got 7 of them out of there. So I'm not going to elaborate that, but it was Coast working with us. They had outreach. They had people that would help us. They would let them take a shower. They would let them wash clothes and things like that. So not only was Coast helping the community, they were helping everybody. Long about when they started falling apart, for whatever reason, their purge, I call it a purge, people started leaving, and they left quickly. We started losing our ability to have things done. Then when we gained literally overnight 7 or 8 people, now some of them have gone. We've got a couple out to hospitals, but others are still here. And I want to say exactly what the chief said. Some of them have been arrested over and over again, and they come back. Okay, so we have to, there's a problem with that. But we have 7 people left who are still mentally ill. We have absolutely no services in this town for them. Adapt will not come up here, even though they say they are. I haven't seen them. I don't know if anybody else has. Okay, Adapt won't come up here. We're only 13% of the population of the county is what I was told by them. And Coast Community, unfortunately, no longer has anybody. They don't even have outreach people anymore.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're going to cut back pretty heavily to basically what they were at the bank, probably the pharmacy, and Dr. Howe, and he can't handle it all himself.
Yeah.
And that's going to be it. So that was our downfall. Now, why is that? Why does everybody have a different tent? And if you remember, for a year when Gary started and we had it up until July, everybody had the same tent. That was money that Coast had gotten under grants, and their job was to provide that as part of the outreach, to provide tents. We even used the size of the tents in our write-ups and our rules because they were consistent. They were all the same color.
Yeah.
And once that went away, we had to get them what we could. The big tent on the end was given to the gentleman there by the sheriff department. Okay, so I'm not making excuses. I'm just letting you know that what's happening in our camp is also happening in our community. We have 45 people who desperately need that kind of help, and they're not getting it.
So Lauren, one thing that I think that I've been thinking we need to do, and maybe you can help me think about that, is I think as like a council, we need to write a letter to like our county commissioners or Senator Smith, or we need to figure out, the fact that we no longer have county health services, we have no public services. We've got to, as a council, that's something I think we can try to help with. I don't know exactly who that letter needs to go to, but I think that's something that we can do and need to do.
The county commissioners are very aware of it because they feel that, not that we're getting shortchanged, but they feel that this is an issue that the whole county's getting shortchanged, and they've spent a lot of money Okay, do you want to, do you want to hear why Coast now Adapt
No,
can't?
I'm
Okay.
gonna have to cut you off,
Okay.
Lauren, because
Anyway, but I thank you, and believe me, we were, that site was available. We were given that site. We didn't choose that site. And we're willing to work with you. And by the way, I had Tanya send all of you an email from the city that is actually doing that different areas
great.
around the city. So you
Okay.
guys can read that.
Well-
That's we got that via email today. So.
Okay, well, Lauren, thank you so much. And I will reiterate, I think everybody really
thank you.
appreciates your effort, and we recognize this is a
Yeah,
really
and thank you
difficult
for
situation.
for working
Thank
with
you.
us
Yeah.
because we're going to have to grow. And by the way, add Pat Ross on that committee too, because he's on the committee.
He asked also.
Mayor Cox put him on last.
Okay, we'll see. We'll figure it
Thank
out
you.
later. Okay, thank you. Andrew.
I'll be very quick. So Andrew Perry, I'm a police officer for Port Orford. Sorry. So I feel like we made a lot of progress tonight. It feels like we've agreed on some stuff that we've not found agreement on previously. Also, I did actually see Adapt in town today, which was odd. And one of the residents or people that's staying at the camp was actually in there getting some services. So that was interesting to see. It's not common. What I really wanted to address was a couple of Councilor Tidy's concerns with the disbursement of the camp. Not to sound cold, but I truly do believe that enforcing that would provoke people to stay or to leave that otherwise are staying that have no real reason to be here. The people who have ties here and who are locals and need help, they're gonna, I believe, follow the directions and break up camp and probably not be a problem. But the ones who are staying here who might just be here to get the free services or the help that's being offered, I think those people might be motivated to leave. So I don't think that by the camp being broke down every day, it's going to cause a huge issue throughout town. Obviously, anything's possible, but I believe that the possibility of that becoming an issue is pretty slim.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Andrew.
yeah.
And I think everybody knows is we'll just have to adjust and adapt and adjust and as we go. So thank you. And thank you for your work on this and your input on this too.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, anybody online? Any citizens online?
Yes, me, Jen Bailey.
Okay.
So I had not planned to speak tonight at all, but I do think this has been a good meeting and progress has been made. Obviously, as many of you know, I live across the street from Ray's. So I'm very interested in this zone exclusion idea because I'm a residential property inside the commercial zone. So I definitely gonna, want to, be tracking all that. The other thing I did want to bring up is that I had emailed John Huddle about the possibility of the city providing transportation and dump fees for any homeless cleanup that volunteers do. I hadn't heard back, but I just wanted to let you all know I'm really interested in that on my own and reaching out, but I would hope that the city would consider something like that to help us out.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
That's it.
Very much
Yep,
for that
just my
comment.
comment. Yep, thanks.
Anyone else online or in the audience? Okay, counselor considerations. Does anybody have any considerations that they'd like to bring up at this time? Okay, with that, any considerations, John or Shayla? Anybody else?
Meeting, when you want to do that meeting.
Oh, that's it. Thank you so much, Greg. We need to schedule the meeting. So we have, I think, 2 weeks from now, I don't have my, let's see, calendar is Thursday, November 2nd or something. Were you thinking about, Parks meeting?
We have a Parks meeting at 6. So.
Isn't that, it's not, it's on Thursday night. Okay. How about on the 1st, Wednesday? Or does it, no, Wednesday, somebody else has it. What, I don't have a
Well,
calendar. You're gonna have to help us.
honestly, I'm looking at Monday, October 30th. Would that work for everyone? I don't know. This is a special meeting. It doesn't have to be on a Thursday. All we need is at least 7 days notice to put notice of this ordinance out there. And then also, I think that's 10 days away from tomorrow. And it should, I believe in that 10 days time, or at least and we'd publish the agenda Monday, the 23rd. Could we put together a draft ordinance on the exclusion zone by Monday? I believe the pieces are there to put a draft together. So
Would you be able to, I think we'd want to see that certainly before on the Friday. I mean, council would want to get a chance to read it over the weekend.
well, you mean tomorrow, have it ready by tomorrow?
No, I mean, ready by the 20, I know you're saying you want to do notice. I'm saying by the 27th, if we were going to.
Sure, no, we would have a draft published on the 23rd, a week ahead of the meeting on the 30th.
That would be the agenda, but you'd have a draft ordinance? I mean, that's just
Yeah, we have
Monday.
materials in the agenda. So yeah, there would be the ordinance on the loan, the
Okay.
2 job descriptions, the other ordinance on, the well ordinance, right? Or
Second reading.
on the well ordinance.
Yep.
I gave you my list of the 4 and I don't know if you.
I ended up having Pat's pile here too, so I got a little bit confused here. It's here somewhere.
Anyhow.
We have
so
the
there were
list, yeah.
The 4 items.
Sorry, John.
It's okay, Ann.
So,
So anyhow, but the ones that I requested that be on that meeting, those are already ready. The only thing that I
Okay.
have to come up with is this exclusionary ordinance text, which I understand will be a more or less a cut and paste of another jurisdiction's ordinance, kind of tailored to us with identifying the properties of, of exclusion, which would then allow the non-exclusion in other places. So I think if the 30th works for everyone, that would be my proposal. I don't want to do it on the 31st. That's a Halloween.
You can get me.
When is the golf thing?
I can't do it.
28th Saturday.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have another
can't
meeting
do
on the 30th. I could do the 6th. Can we do it? You can't do the 6th?
What else is going on the first week in November?
Just that Thursday is city council.
Wednesday the 1st. I don't want to do Friday, but Wednesday the 1st then?
Yeah.
Is that?
That's good.
I'm free any day.
The Watershed Council might meet here then, but we could ask them to meet somewhere else or something. I don't know if they rent this room or what it is, but
You're looking at what day?
Wednesday the 1st for
Right.
a special meeting on those 4 items plus a new revision of the exclusion of the reasonable time, place, and manner.
Yes.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. And then
I got a question.
All right, Tim. Sorry.
So my question would be, are we going to come up with an ordinance telling folks where they can camp or where they cannot camp?
I think
Currently,
I think it's, the some of the samples that Andrew sent out were places where people cannot camp. And that's how the ordinance is written. But I was trying to nail him down and say, yeah, but when you're talking to people, you're going to have to probably say, where can you camp, So I think that's part of the details to be worked out, Tim.
Okay, well, I'd like to just put my input on that. If we're going to tell them where they can't camp, it should be reasonable distance from residents, reasonable distance from a business, reasonable distance from a school, and probably the distance from the school should be quite larger than the other 2, and reasonable distance from our city parks.
I took notes.
And I throw in wetlands too.
Okay, I agree with you 100% on that.
Lakes and wetlands,
Wetlands, maybe our water and sewer treatment plants.
When you have this meeting, you're going to want to have a zoning map in front of you because what you've just described is the town of Port Orford.
pretty
So
much.
Well, Shayla, when you sent a draft of this, that's actually what I asked him because it looked like it excluded everywhere. And I said, well, where is there left? And he said, well, he never answered me.
yeah, I don't know.
So I think that's the detail to be worked out. It may not be, as Greg was saying, it may not be as easy as it sounds.
This inclusion zone you guys are thinking about doing, I'd be game, because we had, what, how many people showed up when we asked across the street at 17th and 18th Street?
Yeah.
And now we want to give them more than one spot. I think we're going backwards right now. Honestly, to me personally, exclusion zone and everything else is the most backwards thing to what we're doing. To me.
Well, I
Already
think,
say I'll be a no.
I think we're just going to look at it. And if it doesn't work out, if after John does the research, it doesn't work out, then we're enforcing our ordinance and we'll see where it gets us.
But are we?
Well, that's what we're going to try to do, right? That's the plan.
What I understood is
Part of the requirement should probably include a requirement of moving every once in a while. Like you could,
We're not supposed to encourage, why are we encouraging people to stay here? And we're not, I think that's, as a council, we're compassionate people. So we're trying to give people that thing. But as a city, we need to, me personally, I have to disassociate myself from the compassionate person and the city business that we are and that we represent as the town. They're telling me they don't want that. And I need to listen to that. And I mean, it's not, there's a little small group that's wanting it and they're trying to help out, but
And they're really not trying to keep people here. They actually have.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But by letting them actually stay and not breaking up, like the end-to-end policy and everything else, that actually to me encourages them to, that gives anyone else passing through town, hey, this town is cool with you staying here, instead of being a transient like we're supposed to encourage through the state law. That's all I'm saying. I understand the compassion side. It's a very tough issue. Everyone keeps saying that, and I understand it. But as a city representative, I have to look at the city side of it, not the person who's not a city taxpayer, not a city resident or anything else. They're supposed to be transiting. I'm trying to help them out for the temporary time that they're here, not giving them stuff that I can't, me personally, give them trash services and everything else when I have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. People that they're in this town pay for it. It's just it's tough.
Well, I think that's a great point. And John, maybe when you're looking at those exclusionary zoning options, I mean, I think we have to think about that. Okay. Any other citizen or any other council considerations?
Remember who that guy is?
No. Okay. Well, if there's no other council considerations, do I get to say it? This meeting is adjourned.
Well,
No, we have
Executive session.
But don't we have to adjourn this meeting and
Yeah,
then
let's-
start the executive
No, you
session?
need a motion to go into executive session. I would move to go into executive session under whatever number you've got there. And then after a 5-minute break, please.
Yep.
Okay.
Take a recess. So we
moved.
have to.
Okay.
So
So can I enter?
Will there be action out of executive session?
afterwards, yes, there will be a motion to proceed as directed in exec session. So we come back to this meeting after.
We don't adjourn.
Okay. So can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I think Brett did.
Brett did? Okay. Did I get a second?
I didn't give a number though, and I got in trouble for that before.
No, he said the number on the agenda, whatever the numbers.
Okay, is that good enough? Because
Okay. We got a second. Okay. Call for the vote. Greg?
Yes.
Gary?
Yep.
Brett?
yes.
Harry?
Yes.
Ann? Yes. Tim?
Tim, yes, how do I get into the executive session? Just stay where I'm at?
Well, hold on. Well, we can kick everyone out of here. Chief, everyone else lock the room. So that, well, I'm saying that nobody can come in whatsoever. You know what I mean? Then you will see who's in. But yeah, we can call them if you want.
I think, Tim, I think we just call you on the phone if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I think we need a little, people want a little recess too, or did we have to, 5 minutes? And then
Okay, so you'll call me on the phone, right?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that'll
Okay.
work just fine.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you. Thank you
Bye.
guys all for helping me get through this.
You're doing a
I guess
great
I
job,
can't,
man.
I guess I
Yeah,
can't
no
click
kidding.
the,
You're doing a
I was
great
gonna
job.
try to do the gavel here, but I